my son's mental health condition came along with something that really surprised us. As a matter of fact, this was the first sign that something was different. My son, all of a sudden, he first started to abuse alcohol, and we didn't know why he was drinking so heavily. On a trip home visiting us when he was in the military in Washington, D.C., and after leaving the military and us finding out that he did have a mental illness, I started to educate myself through NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I learned that many individuals self-medicate the symptoms of their mental illness with drugs or alcohol or a variety of other things. And my son became addicted first to crack cocaine. At one point, he was on the streets homeless. He had a family. There is no way that we would not try to support my son after knowing that this was an illness. But he was always arrested for being in the possession of or something that led to him going to jail and receiving punishment instead of treatment. So that became a mission for me. As a mother, I said, my son needs help, not, incarceration. That never helped him when he went to jail, but treatment did. So eventually, over this 20-year period, the system is slowly, been changing to a point where they are treating mental illness and substance use disorder together instead of it being two separate roads, and then trying to bring that person together. There was a period during our journey where it was actually more acceptable for my son to have a substance use disorder versus a mental illness because of the stigma associated with mental illness. So oftentimes when because so many people were experiencing this in just, over across the country and in my neighborhood, so it was more, acceptable even for me. I had to get over our self-stigma. And again, it was education that helped us. And that's when I began to advocate more for treatment, instead of, I joined an organization called A New Path, Parents for Addiction Treatment and Healing, because that organization understood harm reduction, and they understood and they taught us as a community, that we should be advocating for our loved ones who are addicted to street drugs and alcohol, no matter the reason, whether they're self-medicating, for a mental illness or any other reason. So I just, wanted to share that, oftentimes people don't look at a mental illness as a medical condition. If my son had cancer of any type of cancer, someone would be bringing a casserole to the door. But when I say, oh, my son's in crisis or he's in the hospital due to his mental health challenge, it's sort of a different response. So again, erasing the stigma that and letting everyone know that mental illness is a medical condition, and substance use disorder is a medical condition that needs treatment and not punishment. I used to write letters when my son was in the midst of a trial for something drug related, and I used to write, you can't punish mental illness out of an individual. I used to always end my letters with that. So where we are today in this now 21-year journey, I used to not think my son would make it to age 25 or 30 or 35. There have been periods of jail and prison and homelessness, and I look at him today as the most resilient person that I know. My son still finds things he can smile about and love life. I learned through NAMI and A New Path that recovery was possible for him. So that's where I hold the hope. And I teach other family members that too. I said, you just hold the hope for them when they can't. And today, my son is living independently. There are many times that he lived with us, as an adult. And, sometimes that's not always the most comfortable situation just because, you're talking about three adults. His younger brother has moved on with his life into adulthood. And I think sometimes they often see that there's sort of an arrested development that has occurred in their own lives. But he is living independently today. He is in treatment. He, I don't live with him, so I can't, attest to, how he's managing. But the fact that he has not had any law enforcement contact in a negative way over the last now 7 years. There was a call right before he moved out to live on his own that he called himself for help. He called 911 and asked for a PERT team because he was feeling some symptoms of his illness. And he came and knocked on our door and he says, I've already called. We were, waking up and trying to figure out what was going on. And he said, they said that the clinician wasn't on because it was 2:00 in the morning. But the fact that he even knew at that point in his life that he called for help is really something. So I felt better, and I feel better about him being out there. I still worry. I'm still a mother. He still lives with severe and persistent mental illness. I don't know when he might decide to use substances again. So that is something that I just have to pray about. And I, just wanted to thank you for listening to our story and our journey as a family, and see the family side of someone living with mental illness and substance use disorder.